For kind introduction, and first I'd like to really thank you and also the staff of the Swiss Embassy and also Swiss Next for taking this initiative and inviting us to be here. And I'm born and brought up in India. I studied at IIT Delhi, and before that IIT, at that time, University of Roorkee. So for me, it's always a great pleasure to come to India and also share my experience in Switzerland. I'm living there for close to 29 years. So as an example, Switzerland is known for punctuality of time, and a lot of young people are there. In Switzerland, when somebody says 9 a.m., it means 9 a.m. And one of the guy, when I went to Switzerland 29 years back, the guy said, if you reach somewhere at 9:05, it means you are not respecting the value of that person. And when you reach somewhere at 8:55, then you do not know the value of your own time. So this was a very great fact which I really learned. Switzerland is also not only about punctuality of time, but high precision. So they do, it's a small country, they do things in a small manner, but highly precise and very effective in terms of cost, in terms of performance efficiency. So now that will bring me to more technical things, which I'm going to speak about flexible thin film solar cells. These are the solar cells which normally you might not have seen it. So I have three hats. I am at ETH, I'm a professor there. So I'm also a scientist at Empa, and I founded a company, Fleesum. So I have a mix of all the three, and I will give the talk in view of that, especially in view of talking about the So we have environmental concern, and I'm not going to talk about all these concerns which we are fully aware of, but what I'm going to talk about is that electricity is one of the most expensive form of energy which we require. Imagine if there would not be any electricity, how miserable the life would be. So electricity is one of the most expensive and desirable form of electricity, and when we look to the available resource, sun is the perennial source of power, and within 1 hour we receive enough energy to meet the global demand for 1 year. So there is no need to dig oil, there is no need to make holes in the earth, but one has to simply look up to the sun, and it provides you abundant energy. The only thing is that how do you convert into this light into electricity? And there is only one device which is called solar cell. This directly converts light into electricity. There is no other device which can convert light or any other form of energy directly into electricity without going through some multiple steps. So the typical efficiencies theoretically are about 25%. You can get to higher efficiencies depending on how you make your solar cell. So now in this slide I'm presenting different type of materials which are used for making of silicon solar cells. On top what you see a picture of a traditional solar cell which is based on silicon wafer. So this is what normally you see in the market. This type of technology from the concept is about 55-year-old technology. There are several companies, and this takes almost 90% of the market share. Then there are other technologies based on thin films, and these are the materials which you see. Cadmium telluride, this is material which First Solar company uses. CIGS, copper indium gallium selenide, this is a compound semiconductor. Copper zinc tin selenide, this is also a compound semiconductor. Perovskite, and also multi-junction solar cells. So my research group at Empa works on all these materials, and we hold the world record in the flexible solar cells for CIGS, cadmium telluride, and also perovskite tandem CIGS solar cells, and we also are involved into technology transfer. So what you see, the background of this slide is it's like a beautiful field of flowers, and the message is that there are many different technologies. They provide you different options, so there is nothing like the best technology. It's like a basket of fruits. You have apple, banana, orange. If you have chosen apple, it doesn't mean banana has some bad qualities. It's a matter of choice. So the traditional technologies are based on silicon wafer, and when one looks to the market overall, so almost, as I said, 90% of the market is based on multi-crystalline or crystalline silicon wafer. Thin films, which are relatively young technologies, just take about 10% of the market share. So what is the problem with the traditional silicon wafer-based technology? I'm not getting into the detail. It's a very successful technology with the progress over 55 years, but now it has reached to the ultimate cost potential. There is a very little possibility to further reduce the cost below 50 or 60 dollar cents. It's a very energy intensive technology. It takes a lot of energy to make silicon from sand, then to make silicon wafers, and then to make solar cells, and then to make module. India was far ahead of any other countries. Already in 1970s, there was the energy center at IIT Delhi where I studied, but over the period of time it disappeared, and now almost 85% of the supply comes from China. Now, the second generation of technologies are based on thin films. These are the coatings which one applies on glass, about 3 or 4 millimeter thick glass, and you have a very uniform coating. So when produced on similar scale in the production plant, this provides lower production cost, and the example is a company called First Solar, which makes cadmium telluride solar cells on glass. It's a US based company, and it's one of the most successful companies. Then if you replace glass, which is a heavy thing, by foil, you generate next generation of technologies, and these are flexible thin film solar cells. So our interest is in this futuristic high efficiency flexible solar cell technology. And then there are some ideas where we have still some research in the labs. So Empa, when I was also at ETH, through the Swiss National Science Foundation, we supported a project at IIT Kanpur to initiate organic solar cells. So that was a very good starting seed point at IIT Kanpur, which helped them to initiate solar cell activity. That was about 13 years back. And currently we are also working at IIT Delhi in a collaborative project. So my talk will be mostly focused on this innovative, flexible CIGS solar cells. So now when we look, unfortunately, the people from the silicon industry or PV industries are not in this room. And I heard some talks yesterday. In India, everybody talks about the cost. And one says how low the cost of the solar modules can go down. And so that's what the number you see, 60 cents. And these are the modules made in China and Malaysia and Singapore. And this is the lowest cost of 3 cents. This is for a project and in Arabian country. So this tells you that solar cells can already be cheaper than the traditional coal or thermal or oil or nuclear power plant produced electricity. So it can be quite competitive. Now, when one looks to the business, this tells you the reality. When you see, this is the company First Solar, which is a publicly traded company. And when you see here the names of all the Sun Power, JA Solar, Jingli, Trina, all these companies are under heavy debt. One company, which is for solar, this is highly profitable. So when you buy here in India solar modules, which are very cheap, one doesn't know that these people are burning their own home for providing cheap solar modules. And this is possible only when the government supports. So when it comes to the competitiveness of India, I think in this traditional technology, India will have no chance to compete with Chinese companies because Indian government cannot provide the subsidy and this type of financial model which Chinese companies have it. So the message here is this company First Solar, which uses thin film, this is the highly profitable company. So we are working not on these type of technologies but the technology of thin film, and there is already a success story. Only thing is that this company uses glass which is heavy and we want to make it flexible solar cells. Also, this tells you about the energy payback time of a rooftop installed system comparing these traditional technologies of silicon, monocrystalline silicon, multicrystalline silicon with cadmium telluride and CIGS thin films. So the energy payback time tells you how much energy has gone to make the solar module and in what time you can recover it. Because money can be manipulated, but the energy is money. So the lower the energy payback time, it means better is the technology. And here is a comparison of a 14% silicon module with about 11-12% thin film module. So even with the lower efficiency of thin film, one has a lower energy payback time, which means a very profitable technology despite having somewhat lower efficiency. So with this introduction, we have chosen to work on CIGS thin film solar cells. I will not get into the all details, but what the message is that if produced on industrial scale, this can provide electricity well below 5 euro cents, and also it can significantly contribute to the reduction of the CO2 footprint. So it will help to make environment more clean, and also the CO2 footprint is lower compared to the silicon wafer technology. Here what you see is the device structure. So one makes solar cells on a substrate which can be a glass or a metal or polymer film, and then you have many layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. All the thickness of these 5 layers is put together is about 3 micron. Just to tell you what 3 micron means, when you take a human hair, the people which we are sitting around, the hair thickness, this can be anything from 30 up to 50 micron. So we are talking about 1/10 of the human hair thickness, which is grown or deposited or coated on any substrate. So it's a nanotechnology, which is very sophisticated technology. And so we make thin film solar cells for which all these different materials and coatings and machines are needed. So at Empa, my research group holds the highest efficiency world record, and this is 20.4%. This is as high as multicrystalline silicon when I compare apple to apple. And this world record, which we improved during the last 15 years, started at about 12% when I was at ETH. And then when we want to make a module, we do it in a monolithic interconnect. So there is a complex process and we get to 17%. And these are all independently certified record efficiencies. So these values are as high as one will get with multicrystalline silicon. So now here I'm comparing the traditional technologies. This is silicon wafer technology and this is thin film on glass. So they are grown thin films on glass, deposited are on 3 or 4 millimeter thick glass, and then one has to provide another support of 3 or 4 millimeter glass. So effectively one has about 8 millimeter of glass, and same is the dimensions of these modules. So if you will take 1 square meter of these modules, they will weigh typically anything from 10 up to 18 kilogram. So if you imagine 1.5 square meter, it's very difficult to lift that module. So there are a lot of disadvantages despite that these technologies are successful. They are very high, they are rigid, they can break, and there are a lot of problems with this. On the other hand, when you change the glass or wafer to a foil and apply a solar cell which is 3 or 4 micron, you have several advantages. This is flexible, so this is one of my PhD student who is holding, now she is a manager in a US company, flexible solar cell, and you see this module is more than 1.5 square meter, and a 4-year-old small girl can hold the module very well. The same size module of this technology, I bet I would have big difficulties to hold that way. So it has a lot of advantage, this flexibility and lightweight. And the key is that this lightweight and flexibility is not a new technology. It was already there, but it is a high efficiency, the high performance, which makes us different. So there are various advantages when one will produce these solar cells with roll-to-roll manufacturing. So what I showed you, for example, these devices, these are very small area devices, 5 by 5 centimeter. Now the innovation is how do you transfer all the scientific know-how of the lab on industrial scale. So there is one method called roll-to-roll manufacturing, and basically what we have, we take a plastic film, it's like a potato chips type of plastic film, but a different material, and then we do the coating. So it has several advantages. I will not get into the details, but when produced on industrial scale, this will provide lower module cost and also the balance of system cost, which is as important as the module cost, will be lower because of the lightweight, flexibility, and also it opens many possibilities for applications. So Fleesum company has 3 investors, 2 Swiss and another is a Tata Group company, and normally it takes about 10 to 15 years to transfer a technology from lab to industry. So Fleesum has spent almost 10 years. Now we have 15 megawatt production plant capacity near Zurich airport on 1 meter width foil, and we have another development plant. So at overall at Fleesum company there are about 70 employees who are working. So this brings me to the introduction of the Fleesum company. Fleesum is a spin-out company from ETH Zurich, and it has a exclusive R&D partnership with Empa, and Fleesum has received support from Swiss Federal Office of Energy, CTI, which is Swiss Commission for Innovation, and several European projects during the last 10-12 years. Also, Fleesum is winner of several awards, McKinsey Award in 2005, Technology Pioneers in World Economic Forum. So in 2007, we were the technology pioneers for the most innovative technology and the company with future impact. And also there is a Zurich Cantonal Bank, they have a pioneering prize. We are the winner of the pioneering prize. And this year Swiss Embassy also recognized Fleesum company, and we are very grateful to receive this Swiss Ambassadors Award, which is a very significant recognition for Fleesum. Besides that, there are some other awards to Fleesum which recognize their international positioning. So Fleesum's products are flexible solar modules, like they can be applied on a plastic foil, they can be laminated on a metal sheet, they can be also applied on a curved sheet, and one can form different products, like this is a solar roof tile, this is a laptop charger, and this is very important. Many people, especially in India, when you go to village, you see huts or rural houses, sometimes they are of straw. So if you want to apply traditional solar modules which are 10-15 kg per square meter, you have simply no chance to put such a heavy load. But when you have a flexible solar module, it is possible to apply them on the roof. You can laminate them on cars. So basically, you have many possibilities. And this is one example that how FLISM can make a very large module. And you see this person is holding about 3 square meter module very easily. I have a smaller version of this module, so it's like this one. So see, this is a flexible solar module. And this what I'm going to pass on to you. It's a sandwich between 2 polymer films, so you can roll them, and instead of putting them on plastic film, you can laminate it. So that was the example I showed you on metal foil. And you can laminate it on wood, you can laminate it on any surface. In this form, you can keep literally the power in your pocket. For example, I have this example here, very small solar cell because it's a very high efficiency. It's laminated on this leather case. So it's you have a connector and you can charge mobile phone. These type of products, you will never see them in market. They don't exist because nobody produces them. So you don't have to look for a power point. Just go under the sun and you can charge your mobile phone. And this is very important for the people who live in rural conditions or in mountains, in the army. Not only the mobile phone, but you can also have, for example, multiple of these small cells. It's like the size of the wallet. That's why it fits into my pocket. And you can open it up and you have even more power. So basically, we have all the possibilities which futuristic microelectronic, the future is all electronic. People have mobile phones, iPad, and all that. You require power. They consume a lot of power. So when you have all these type of things, you can really get a very luxurious, high-tech quality. But this is not the interest of FLISM. FLISM's interest is really providing power, reducing CO2 footprint. So we are not focusing on this type of applications, although it will be possible for us. Our focus is really to apply these modules, and I'm passing on especially to young people so that you can see how it is. It gives you possibilities to apply them on buildings. Could you kindly pass it on? And then to reduce the CO2 footprint, because all the buildings, whether you use concrete, you use metal films, metal sheets, they emit a lot of CO2. So they have no functionality. When you go and you find a metal roof, it simply provides you a shelter, but you do not know how much CO2 footprint it has. So if you can laminate this type of foils, it will reduce the CO2 footprint of the buildings, and this would be very important for the future. Yeah. So now with this, I show you other application possibilities. And basically, this is an example of a Swiss village. What you see here, these are roofs with metal. So they have no functionality. They all look black. But if one would use this type of solar modules, even here in India, you see this type of roofs with metals, you can produce electricity. So I would leave with you this image which you can use stretch your imagination, that not only for terrestrial but also for a space application, satellites, just because of the lightweight, you have many new possibilities for applications which will be otherwise simply not possible with the traditional solar modules. So with that, I would like to thank about this project, which is a very highly innovative new technology, and now we will see that maybe in a couple of years the products will be in the market. Thank you very much. Sorry? Yeah, so with this monolithic technology, we have possibility to tailor the voltage and the wattage. The typical efficiency of the industrial modules will be in the range of 13 to 17%, depending on which version of the technology we have. And the voltage, for example, when I showed you 1 stripe of half a centimeter gives you half a volt. So number of strips or stripes can add the voltages. So this one and the other one here was simply giving you more voltage, and the current is given by the area. So this is a very unique advantage of this type of technology, that you can tailor the wattage and the voltage.
Can you put on the microphone, please?
How does this compare with dye solar cells and also new materials like graphene and carbon nanotubes?
Yeah, okay. So the dye solar cell is a dead technology now. Nobody works on that technology except of some people who are just finishing the R&D projects. Dye solar cells have low efficiencies and they suffer from stability problems. Now the next generation of the dye solar cell is a perovskite solar cells, where my group also works. So these are quite efficient, but it takes about 15-20 years. So there is a lot of hype for this perovskite solar cells, but the dye solar cell is a dead technology simply because of the lower efficiency. The typical efficiencies are about 3 to 5%. So it has no chance, because the balance of system cost is very important. So these days, if you want to be in a commercial sector, at least you have to talk about 12-13% module efficiencies. And also let me just give you graphene. There is no solar cell yet made up of graphene. Graphene is just a contacting layer, and the other technologies are just still in an emerging state.
Right. May I request that?
Yeah, that's where the lot of know-how comes in, that how you deposit 1 micron layer on such a large area, and that's why when I was telling you that it takes 10-15 years and few tens, if not 100 million to get to. No, cadmium, this is an excellent question you raise. Cadmium is poisonous, but cadmium telluride, by the way, we are not using cadmium telluride for these solar cells. Cadmium telluride is an extremely stable material. It's like sodium and chlorine. Sodium and chlorine both are dangerous. Sodium and chlorine are extremely dangerous, hazardous material, but a compound of sodium chloride we eat every day. It's salt. So cadmium is toxic, but cadmium telluride, material used by First Solar Company, is extremely stable material. It has no environmental or health hazard. Sorry? No, it's not costly because the material which one uses is hardly about 1 micron. So it's a very small quantity. The light absorption of this material is highly efficient. So in case of silicon wafer, you require 200 or 300 micron, whereas for this thin films, you require only about 1 micron. So from the cost point of view, when you take the overall module cost, the material cost is very insignificant contribution.
Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. May I, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Sir, have you thought of making a transparent film and a breathable film?
Breathable one would not require, because the solar cells, they use materials which can corrode with moisture. So it's bad for the solar cell. So one would not use breathable material, and the transparent can be done, but then you lose the efficiency. So when you want to get very high power density, then you want to absorb all the light. You can make them semi-transparent, and one example I just wanted to show is that what you see here is a Swiss mountain. So it's a picture, but when you reverse it, it's a solar module. So you have possibility to use it as a curtain. Inside, like what you see, that yellow color, you can have your own picture. So inside is beautiful and outside is black. Now you can remove some part and then you can make it also transparent. So that way it is possible to do it.
Thank you, Dr. Tiwari.